Okay, welcome to the New York collaboration enterprise collaboration meetup for the December. Well, we have a star-studded guest speaker today, Matt Wade, and he's going to be talking about chatbots and AI and really how it benefits everyone. But before we start off, let's get to know the speaker. So, Matt, when did you start working with SharePoint?
Oh, SharePoint, let's say 2010, I think it was, on SharePoint 27 or 2007.
Right, okay. And you're in Boston, Massachusetts, is that correct?
I'm Albany, New York.
Albany, New York, okay. Right. I was actually in Orienta about last month, actually, which is about an hour and a half from you.
Yep.
Right, okay, very cool. And who do you work for these days?
So I work for H3 Solutions, which is a small consulting firm out of Manassas, Virginia, close to DC. And but people know me for the product that the company works on, which is called AdBot.
Right. Okay. Are they doing, because they're in Virginia? Are they like doing a lot of government work?
Yeah, there's a number of government contracts.
Okay. And government work, particularly interested in chatbots. Like chatbots and AI is very much like talk of the town, isn't it, these days?
So yes and no. We do a lot of consulting on just SharePoint, migration, Teams, Office 365, kind of the litany, and then we also do the product at the same time. And actually, right now, government's a little bit of a hard nut to crack because a lot of the Azure services aren't yet ready for government tenants, which can be a bit of a slowdown for us. But the way that we look at it is, I always recommend to government agencies, if they are in a GCC high DoD, kind of G1, G3, G5 licenses, is to get yourself an enterprise license on the side and play with the stuff to see how it looks before you actually roll it out. It's a great time to do some testing, build out your whatever processes you want to do, make sure that they work, and then when the services roll out for government, then just port them over.
All right. Well, you certainly know chatbots and AI and your government licenses. Okay. So before we start, okay. I always say this to all of the speakers and the guests. Just tell me one secret about yourself that no one else knows about you.
I guess it's not a secret in my everyday life, but in the industry, I would think most people wouldn't know that I was actually on my school board for 7 years and was school board president for 4 of those years in my early and mid 20s. So I was in charge of a local school district in upstate New York, $20 million budget. I was 25 at the time, and elected by the people, the whole 9 yards. But we were the legislative body that oversaw how the school functioned and all that stuff.
Very cool. Good bit of giving back to the community.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hand it over to you because the attendees are mounting up. So our Q&A is not working at the moment, so I apologize for that. So Matt, why don't you speak, and if the Q&A gets working, I will field the questions over to you.
Okay, yeah, perfect. That sounds good. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate for having me today.
Pleasure.
It was fun to speak. I think I spoke to the same group a couple of years ago at the New York, Times Square office, actually.
You did, yes.
On not the same topic, but it was like an AI night, basically.
All right, I was going to say, I hope you've updated the topics and the comments.
Definitely, yeah.
By then.
There have been some nice changes in some of the services, even so I don't think I covered most of the stuff back then. But let me jump back into PowerPoint quick and do a quick introduction for me. So I'm out of Albany, like I said, working for the AdBot product, and basically what we'll do is no-code chatbots. So I know all of the Azure services really well that you need on the back end to make all of your chatbots work. The difference with what we work on is that we actually plug it into Power Automate, the artist formerly known as Microsoft Flow, and also Logic apps. So here's a good opportunity to feel free to follow me on Twitter, and I will accept anybody's LinkedIn request. So anybody is feel free to connect to me there. Ask me any questions, especially afterwards. Since Q&A is not working, I'm more than happy to field questions or any sort of advisory anything you're looking to do. If anybody knows me for anything, it's usually Office 365 stuff. I'm a Microsoft MVP for O365, and people generally have seen a lot of my infographics out there. Most notably, probably the Everyday Guide to Office 365 groups, and more so than that, the periodic table of Office 365. So this is a project that I've worked on to help explain O365 a bit to people. But we aren't here to talk about Office 365 today. We're going to be talking about bots and sort of the AI paradigm. And I like to start off sessions like this by bringing up Satya and a quote that he I think this was Inspire or Build a few years ago, where he mentioned that human language is a new UI layer. And I think that truly is a paradigm shift that we're working our way towards, especially with new generations coming into the workforce, and even not coming into the workforce, just being consumers, where the people who are, let's say I'm in my early 30s, my little cousins who are 10, 15 years younger than me are much more apt to expect to speak to their devices and not type into it. And that is something that is going to become that much more common, especially as you see the services become that much better when it comes to speech to text, text to speech, and all those kind of services that are out there. So now's the time to jump on the bandwagon. Actually, 2 years ago is probably the time to jump on the bandwagon. And if you're not even convinced on that yet, it's not uncommon for me to have to kind of get a customer over a speed bump of why would they even want a chatbot to begin with, or multiple, or any sort of AI infused tool to help people or assist people along through the process. And there's really three things I like to talk about. The first is going to be getting me access to information I already have. So show me the data that I have already. And you probably can relate to the fact that organizations everywhere have disparate systems all over the place, whether it's on-prem servers, SQL databases, cloud services within Microsoft, whether it's Office 365, email, SharePoint, knowledge bases, Dynamics, fill in the blank, third-party cloud services, Salesforce, Zendesk, Workday, SAP, fill in the blank. And then, of course, a lot of information still in people's heads, which actually is now being sort of harnessed because with things like Microsoft Graph, which is essentially noting everything that's being done, said, or sent within Office 365 and Azure, you actually get an idea of what people are saying to each other, and you can aggregate that information and make use of it. So with a chatbot, you have a central endpoint. You go to the bot, you say hello, you ask for the service you want, you ask for the information you're hoping to get. This can actually go out and ping any of those systems that already exist, which is great because how many times in an IT pro's life have you had to hold back on an upgrade of something because there's a prerequisite behind it that won't let it move forward yet? Let's say you want to upgrade SharePoint, move to the cloud, but there's so many business critical applications that are on SharePoint 2016. We can't move SharePoint yet because those business critical applications have to be migrated first or upgraded or whatever. This is not, this is a moot point when it comes to using chatbots because the bot can just reach out to the service that it needs to, grab the information, update it, change it, delete it, whatever you need, and do it as you go through. So it's a real major way to get value out of what you already have because now the bot can automate the business processes that you're already doing, maybe manually, on paper, maybe it's already electronic, but it's not very slick. You can totally do that. So that's building off what you already have. Now you can go and actually do additional things. So the second thing I'd like to point out here is knowledge. Some of the Azure Cognitive Services include a knowledge aspect to them. You're able to ask questions and get vetted correct responses that come back. For what I'm going to talk about today, it's not machine learning, so don't mix it up with ML. ML is something that actually works through its own information and gets better with time. This is more of a knowledge-based type of build out, but also includes natural language processing. So if I want to say something like, I don't know, how do I onboard a new employee? You can get a vetted correct answer that was written by the SME in the HR department that has either a link to the resources that you need to get started or actually answers the question verbatim right within the chatbot experience. So that's a KB or knowledgeable aspect that you can build on top of a bot when you want to get going with one. The third is going to be taking action. So I already mentioned the getting more value out of what you already have. That is part of the actionable aspect of putting out a chatbot. So if you want a chatbot to be able to post a job requisition to your public-facing job board, maybe you're using Monster or Indeed or something like that, it's really not that difficult to have a request process on the inside that's permission protected to only the HR people that can post job postings, or maybe the managers that are cleared to post job postings. And they can ask for the information that you need. They can, the user can send it to the bot. The bot can post it into the new requisition upload process, and you can connect through the API of that service that happens to use that. And now that bot's able to post directly, and you don't have to do anything except supply the information that's required. So this need to is really the most important aspect, frankly, because when I talk to people about building bots, they'll say that it's a lot of people will come back and say, no, it's super simple. I can build a bot in 3 minutes. So can I. But that doesn't mean it's a good bot. Usually it means that you're connecting a knowledge base to a bot, and that's it. And that process is super easy. I present on it a lot. I've done a lot of sessions at SharePoint Saturdays, but also even at Ignite the Tour across a couple places in the US and Europe. And that's a 15-minute session. It's great. Bite size. Here's your knowledge base. Here's your bot. Deploy your bot to Teams, deploy your bot to SharePoint, wherever else, build out your knowledge base. But that bot actually does nothing. It only answers questions. So don't fall into that trap. If you are going to go forward and build a bot, knowledge bots are totally useful. I'm a knowledge management guy from originally. That's kind of what I got into when I first got into SharePoint. But a knowledgeable bot is only so good. The actionable bot is going to be significantly better. So this is going to bring me into talking a little bit about the architecture of how to build out a bot, and then we'll get into deployment, and I'll show a couple demos and show you how the tools actually work behind the scenes.
Great. So, Matt, what are the, in terms of vocabulary, I have noticed people use bots and AI and machine learning almost like interchangeably. I'm sorry, is this kind of a common misunderstanding?
I would say AI is the generalist term, and you have machine learning, and then you have knowledge tools, and you have chatbots, and they're all sort of different endpoints, and they have different goals. So I would say, where tigers and house cats are both part of the feline family, chatbots and ML are both part of the AI family. But even considering so, the term AI is just so, I don't know, historic within just modern culture. I mean, the movie AI from the late 90s with Haley Joel Osment, that had nothing to do with the kind of tools that we're looking at. Even PowerPoint automatically designing your slides nowadays is considered AI powered. So that term is becoming much, it's almost like, it's not just a buzz phrase, it's like an Uber buzz phrase.
Yeah, I've noticed this on LinkedIn. A lot of people saying, 5 tips for AI or machine learning. And so I'm like, hang on a minute, this is not, this is just reporting actually, or this is just information. It's not machine learning or where it's learning on something on that. But yes, it's it's like everything. It becomes like the marketing buzzword catchphrase of the day.
Yeah, I think the best cheeky definition of what is AI, but just a bunch of if statements put together. I don't necessarily disagree with that, But.
Okay, that sounds like a Twitter.
Yeah, I know, right?
All right, go for it.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about real quickly about this sort of the three-legged stool of a good architecture for a bot. And this is going to be specific to Azure in building chatbots within the Microsoft Cloud. There are totally great ways to do it within the Amazon Cloud, connecting through Alexa. You can use Oracle, IBM Watson, which is famous for having been on Jeopardy back 10 or more years ago. That is still a viable solution if you want to get into that. But Microsoft is the way I would go based on some of my experience so far. So the first thing you need to know is that the bot needs to understand what's going to be coming in, and that's where that natural language processing, another buzz phrase of this decade, NLP. So basically, it's sort of a more controllable search engine tool where, if I go to Google or Bing and I say that I want to find out where, a local restaurant is, and I look up restaurant name near my hometown, it's going to take that note, kind of get an idea that, okay, you're looking for an object in a location, and it's smart enough to know that. Well, when you do that with the search APIs, not as easy. With these natural language process tools, it's a lot easier. You can actually control that a lot better. So think of NLP being sort of like at least the endpoint of search engine access, but on steroids. Next is going to be the knowledge. So you're going to be building knowledge bases. You can use existing knowledge bases, and that would be still a knowledgeable solution, but you'd actually have to connect to those through some sort of API. So maybe you use the knowledge base tool in Dynamics 365. Totally fine. If you want to use that and basically use it in situ where it already exists and pull information from that, you can have the bot understand the input, and the bot can then go grab that information from Dynamics and bring it back. I wouldn't say that that's a bad idea. It's just not necessarily the best, especially if you're doing like IT support, because in that situation, most of those knowledge base articles are like articles, and you really just want to get somebody some information back in a bite-sized packet. And that's really why the knowledge tool that Azure supports is really good, because if you can do like sort of a chatbot infused knowledge base so that the responses are specific to that endpoint, are specific to that chat experience, you're not going to be slapping them over the head with an encyclopedia. Essentially, you don't want to do that. And that brings me to the action part. So this is where you're going to be coding. You're going to be building out actionable workflows and doing all this stuff within the Azure portal and probably through within Visual Studio, that kind of thing. So the bot itself is going to be built using bot service in Azure, and it's going to be built on the Microsoft bot framework. These are two separate things. Their icons and logos look significantly, they almost look like they're copy paste. They're not, they're just rotated slightly, but they are very different things. You're going to be using Lewis and Q&A Maker. for natural language processing and the knowledge base tool. So LUIS is an Azure Cognitive Service, stands for Language Understanding Intelligence Service, and Q&A Maker is Q&A Maker. It is not the same thing as the new Microsoft Q&A that's coming out soon, which is basically the replacement for TechNet forums and whatnot. I don't think that the two teams realized that there were going to be branding issues, branding compatibility issues, which isn't necessarily a surprise coming with, from some of the other branding that we have going on over there.
Maybe the chatbots weren't speaking to each other.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, what happens when you put two AI next to each other and they actually talk? It turned out that they determined their own language, and it was, or built their own language, and it became increasingly. I think they took crawled the internet and found a bunch of human behavior and basically replicated that in their own language, which was major racist comments and hate towards women. That was what these things kind of like fueled with their machine learning that they had.
I remember that, yeah.
So don't do that. It's probably not a good idea for people to go off and do things like that. Never let your AI talk to each other. I think they taught that in Silicon Valley, which just ended this week too. And then the third leg of this sort of three-legged stool of a successful chatbot is going to be kicking off processes to doing. And that's going to be probably Node or C#, totally up to you. You're going to be building that in Visual Studio. All transparency here, I do not code anything. I'm very much an adoption, knowledge, and sort of architecture guy. So I can do all of it up until we talk about the hard coding here. I can do a little bit of HTML, maybe make some bold text, but that's sort of the limit of what I'm able to do, which is why I'm able to work on and sell a product like AppBot, which is the one that I work on, because we use Power Automate and Logic Apps. So we're basically doing a WYSIWYG style workflow editor, and you're able to do conversational back and forth using those steps, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that actually is free to start if you want to try it out at some point, but I'm not here to, you know, push a third-party product, but the options are definitely out there. Now, when it comes to getting access to your bots, you have two wildly different options here. The first is going to be an internal bot, and that is an authenticated experience. The bot knows who you are. It has access to Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Graph, knows who your manager is, knows what building you happen to sit in, presuming all this information is populated within AAD, which is great because that's really good for, hey, let's say I have a question about my iPhone and I want to reach out to the IT department for some help. I don't have to tell them necessarily what device I have or even the serial number. That could be assigned to me in AAD in a custom field. Could also know exactly where I sit, so it knows when the help desk calls that they shouldn't, you know, maybe the help desk is in India and they shouldn't be calling me outside of 8 to 5 Eastern Standard Time in the US. So those types of things can be automatically garnered from this authenticated experience. Microsoft Teams is going to be your primary entry point to these chatbots. And that's the way Microsoft is marketing it, that chatbots live in Teams, these apps live in Teams, Teams is the hub for teamwork, all of that stuff. But even the Azure folks have kind of ridden that wave that get to this stuff in Teams. Just because they're saying that, though, doesn't mean it's the only way to get there. So you can have the same bot accessible through any web app that you want. And that's going to use either web chat, which is sort of a simplified iframe version of the chatbot that you can drop onto a website or into a web portal that you have access to edit. Or you can use direct line, which is our preference. Direct line is a more advanced and complex version of web chat, and it does a lot more for you. And that's the kind of thing where you can drop a chatbot right into SharePoint, and it can have a little pop-up box in the bottom of a SharePoint site. You can put it into any other intranet or any other web app effectively where you're logged in with your Office 365 account and you have access to edit that page. So that would include Dynamics. That would include any of the other, like you could even use it for a Power App if you wanted to. So you can have the same bot through multiple endpoints, totally up to you. Experience is slightly different. When you're in like SharePoint, every time you refresh the page is a new experience. So it's a new welcome message, all that kind of stuff. Teams has that persistent memory, so it knows that you've had these conversations in the past. You're not going to get a welcome message every time that you go see that bot. Now on the external side, this would be like an anonymous IP going to a website and seeing a bot that pops up and says, how can I help you? Which we see all the time now on websites. Feels like website design of the 2019s is always, here's our cookie policy, sign up for our newsletter and talk to our chatbot, right? So websites are going to be the big one, but you're also going to see it within social media. So Twitter feeds, both Twitter feeds and Twitter messages, Facebook message, and then you can also connect to something like SMS through a service like Twilio, which is Azure's service of choice for text message sending. So while you may not think of a text message notification or response, if you respond to that notification and it comes back with information or kicks something off, so maybe FedEx sends you a notification and says something's going to be delivered between 10 and noon tomorrow. Would you like to reschedule? You say yes, it asks you when, and you fill all that stuff out. That's still a chatbot. The bones of the system is exactly the same thing. There's no difference there. And generally those types of things will have you choose, do you want to reschedule? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. So you don't really have a whole lot of natural language processing, but the workflow process of it is still the exact same concept, exact same idea. And in fact, you could have the exact same bot on a website and pushing to text at the same time. A lot of different options there. You can even plug these into Alexa. So you can publish a Microsoft chatbot as an Alexa skill. And the word skill for Alexa is just another term that the term that they use for a chatbot within Alexa itself.
So what's going on here? Alexa, you're speaking into Alexa,
yeah,
and that's then converting this into ones and zeros. Yep. The chatbot is then interfacing with the knowledge base and then going back to Alexa and speaking it out.
Correct. So Alexa is sort of your endpoint where it's doing the speech to text and then it gets the text back from the system. Like you said, it goes into the knowledge base or it kicks off the process, and it will come back and then read out whatever that text is. So Alexa is just sort of the microphone and megaphone in that process. We are seeing, because Microsoft doesn't really have a device that competes with Echoes, and so they're okay with kind of breaking into the
Cortana. What about Cortana?
I mean, it has its software, but it doesn't have a device, right? So Alexa is Cortana, but Echo doesn't exist in the Microsoft sphere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got along with that. Yeah.
You could have Cortana, say, on your phone as an app if you wanted to, but we're seeing the device aspect, at least, is really popular in hospitality and in healthcare. So if you're in a hospital, for example, and let's say somebody's, I don't know, coding. I'm not a healthcare professional, so I'm pulling this directly from watching ER back when I was a teenager. But somebody's coding and you need to say, hey, tell Alexa to call Dr. So-and-so because you're busy with the paddles at that moment, right? Like maybe not that extreme, but you can do something that would be voice enabled to tell somebody to go do something, and that can go do it. Another one that's probably more realistic is nursing homes and geriatric centers. So if you remember the commercial from back in the day of the help, I've fallen and I can't get up, and it was a commercial for a person would wear a chain with a little button on the chain. Yeah. Well, they don't need to do that if they can say something. So if they say to Alexa, help, I've fallen and I can't get up, that can come and get an orderly or a nurse to come into the room and help them get back up off of, into whatever they are. Okay. Hospitality too, you're in a hotel room, you want to tell Alexa that you need more towels, no calling down to the service or to the desk at the front or pressing 5 different buttons on the phone to try to get a hold of somebody. Nowadays, a lot of those hotel companies, when you check in with their app, they actually have a chat system that connects directly to that hotel anyway, and you get access to that starting the morning that you check in. Not even when you check in, but you'll get it like 6 a.m. You don't check in till 3. You'll still have access to say, hey, can I have some stuff put into my room ahead of time? Well, it's pretty easy to put a voice-based chat device as another endpoint for that tool. And when you get into a hotel room these days, it probably says, hello, Matthew, welcome. Right, knows who you are already, knows who your account name and all that stuff is. So this is just one more endpoint to it, just theoretically make it simpler and have people be able to use voice instead of have to text.
Because do you find though people generally just want to talk to human beings? On a website, I see a chat window. So almost like I want to speak to somebody. I don't want to bloody speak to a computer. Kind of. Is there a little bit of this going on?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can totally compare this to phone trees, and press 0 to talk to a representative, but the entire reason that website that's talktoahuman.com or whatever will tell you all of the different companies, service phone numbers, and what line of numbers you have to press to get to a person. But the nice thing is that these things, unless you I'll say maliciously, put a block in front of it and don't accept a natural language request to say, I want to talk to a representative, it's going to be an experience that probably will point you to somebody. So as an example, I had some issue with, I just got a new Mac laptop, and I had a couple questions for Apple. Well, Apple has a help, they use iMessage, and I didn't know that other companies can do this too, but you can use iMessage as a company and provide service through that, and you'll send iMessages directly. So if you're an Android user, this may not be a corollary there, but It's their proprietary messaging software. So as a brand, you can have your own iMessage receipt phone number, we'll call it, but it's branded and everything, and you can actually different colors and all that stuff. But when I text it, it's clearly a chatbot, or at least clearly to me, based on my experience so far. But after 1 or 2 tries, if I say speak to a representative, it will get me on the line with a human to chat with to help me with my problem. And it was actually really easy to do that because they know that people are going to do that. And if they don't provide them the option, that person's just going to stew and be unhappy about it. So for those situations where it's a reasonably standard type of request, I'm in a hotel and I want towels, I don't want to talk to a human. That's my personal opinion, but other people will want to, but plenty of us don't. And it's the same reason that I go to the self-checkout line at the grocery store, right? I'm going to be faster and not have to wait as long to get to the place, to the actual checkout spot, than potentially the cashier. Now, granted, I spent 6 years as a cashier as a kid, so I still know some of the produce numbers, but even so, I'm going to be faster at that. I know how I want to bag my bags. And I know that if I get in line and even if I get in like a 15 items or fewer line, there might be some people there that are not so fast at getting things checked out. Whereas if I go to the self-checkout line, there's usually 4, 6, 8 different, spots I can go to, and the line's going to move faster anyway. So I think it's much of a self-service mentality that some people have versus some people that don't, and providing them both options is going to be better.
Yeah, I suppose the key thing is that nudge factor, where if somebody's calling up and says, you're going to wait 10 minutes to speak to a human being, or you can speak to a chatbot now. Let me just do the chatbot. Okay, I've got nothing to lose. And then once I've done it once, you've got me.
Yeah, that's true. Now, the opposite of that is once it goes bad once, people will walk away and never go back to it. So that's one reason why when you actually build these things out, you have to make sure that they do a good job and they cover most of the experience, most of the, let's say, percentage of problems that they would have, that those are covered. So it's not always saying, I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you mean. That's never a positive experience.
Right.
Yeah. So the big thing here I will make a push to, because I'm kind of a fanboy when it comes to Microsoft Teams, is that for a chatbot that's for like internal help, maybe for HR or for IT or finance or facilities, whatever. And you can have 4 different bots, or you can have one Uber bot that does all of those things. Having the availability across Microsoft Teams is a major win because you have it built into, it's native to your operating systems. In fact, they just rolled out Linux the other day, and then it was native to iOS and Android upon rollout. So out of nowhere, Microsoft Teams hopped into the existence in 2016. And on day 1, it was available on the 4 major operating systems. So if your computer gives you blue screen of death and you can't get out of it, that doesn't mean you don't have Teams anymore to reach out to an IT bot and say, how do I get rid of blue screen of death? Because all you have to do is grab your phone and do the same thing, because that bot is available on Teams on your phone as much as it is available to you through Teams on your laptop.
Right.
So let's do a quick demo. This is a video recording because it is incredibly difficult to try to chat with a bot at the same time that I'm presenting. Also demo gods and all those other cliches. But let's say this one is a human resources type of request. And I have a new employee. The new employee named Bill wants to find out some information about asking for time off. Pretty typical request that affects everybody in an organization. And you'll see here, video-wise, the bot or the Bill here says hello. There's usually a virtual knock on the door. And Bill's first thing that he wants to know is he has a question. His question is, how much vacation time do I get? Very reasonable, simple question that's going to come up. The answer could be qualitative. It might be something where it depends. How long have you worked here? Do we have connections to the system that actually tracks those hours? So I can tell you that you have 7.4 hours left, that kind of thing. But you'll see we kind of went to the limit on this example of how long your chat responses should be. When you're building out knowledge bases, you really need to be in a TLDR, a too long didn't read sort of viewpoint on it, and then provide a link to the resource that actually has that information. So think of it like you're writing a book report back in school, make a statement, have a little footnote, and it brings you to the works cited that says, this is where I got this information. So in this case, the bot's able to say, hey, if you've been at the company for less than 5 years, you get 2 weeks, 5 to 10 years, 3 weeks, etc. And here's where I had the information stored. And it's just a SharePoint site, right? It exists in the HR SharePoint site, pretty easy to find if they had wanted to. But why waste the 30 seconds looking when you could just ask the bot and get the answer in 3? Now, that probably wasn't really his question. His ultimate request is probably going to be, I want to take some time off. So he can say here, I want to schedule some time off. the bot can come back with, in this case, we incorporated adaptive cards, which is a dynamic field or kind of form-based experience where you can pick start date, end date, and which time off type. You can see it's a generic sort of time off request image at the top, but it can be media heavy. You can have videos, all that other stuff in there. Adaptive cards are no code. They're just drag and drop stuff. They export as JSON, really easy to use. So you can see after that was submitted, it's pulling his manager's name and identifying confirmation that he requested vacation time from date 1 to date 2. And then you can see in response, oops, see, this is why video in PowerPoint isn't so great sometimes, because it reacts poorly to random clicks. Okay, so once this goes in, you would get some sort of approval saying, or a confirmation that it went through, which is that first sentence. The next one would be the one which is what happened? Did you get approved? Did you get denied? Well, this is a demo. Everybody gets approved. And it could come back in 5 seconds because the manager happened to have gotten the approval request and they were just super immediate and said yes. Or it could take 5 days. So you want that response to be contextual. So you can see here, it brings up the reference to approved your vacation time request for Monday to Friday, May 18th to the 22nd. You're all set. Used a nice little friendly reference to his first name, so he felt like he was actually, recognized as who he was. And in this case, we actually sent back a nice little receipt, essentially. So this is another adaptive card. This one is less dynamic. It's more of a, they call it a, instead of the first one, which is a form card, because it has fields you can fill out. This is a display card. So you can see here, gives him his name, what his title is, time off type, start, end date, approved by, and a few buttons, right? Maybe I want to add this to my calendar and make myself purple so I can't be booked that day. Maybe I want the out of office reply to be set up automatically. Maybe there's a standard phrase that the company uses and it already has all the information that it needs. I'm taking vacation from May 18th to May 22nd. Please contact so-and-so instead. It could even ask you who's your backup in the process so that that person is automatically added to your out of office. And maybe you want to update that request. So just a couple examples.
So Matt,
go ahead.
Okay, as you said about these bots, they're learning, okay, and surely every company, you've probably got about 1,000 business rules, every fortune, which it doesn't make any sense for every company to start from ground zero. Can you buy these like business rules off the shelf and have them as like the vanilla flavor in the company and then just build it from there?
So I actually haven't seen that. Like we don't even do that with AppBot. It's really just a paint by number type of canvas. We give you the paintbrush, the colors, and the paint by number. I have not seen so much of a, okay, well, here's an HR bot and the bot, here's a template based on the top 30 requests HR companies see. But yeah, that's an opportunity, definitely.
There you go. You know where I am to send the royalties on that one.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, 10 minutes left.
Sounds good. So this one here is the request came in pretty generally. He said, I wanted to take time off. Now, this is really where the natural language processing comes in. So you're able to actually look at this and say, I want to do something at a certain time. And you'll see that when this is the same kickoff process here, you'll see that all the information is pre-populated based on what he said. You'll see that the header at the top actually chooses the image for vacation request because the bot knows that you're asking for a vacation time off type. And you're ready to go. Now, let's say you wanted to call in sick or something. You could easily use your phone and literally, almost you could tell Siri through Microsoft Teams to say that, I'm sick and I'm not coming into work today. So that process would have been 100% the same in that example. But let's say if we go into the background here, how did these services actually work? So at this point, we haven't actually seen any of the behind the scenes. So the first thing we want to look at is Q&A Maker. So that was the first 2 responses that we saw in this example. One was the response to the hello, the virtual knock on the door, and the second was how much time off time do I get? So this is what Q&A Maker looks like. On the left side is where you're going to place your questions and as many different phrasing options that you have for this, which is actually really useful because in your organization, if you have a lot of vernacular, specific vernacular or like terms that are only important to you or even acronyms, which every organization always says, we love acronyms. No, humans love acronyms. So being able to provide a number of different ways to say the same thing. And then on the right side, this is where you're providing that, correct, vetted, subject matter expert written response, short, to the point, and with a link to the source of where you're getting it. You could even provide a button that says, if you said, how much time off do I get? And the response was, this is how much you get. You could provide a nice little, like come hither button. That's, did you want to request time off? Click that button and it kicks off the process automatically and you're good to go. So Q&A Maker, you can add to this as much as you want. You can even use it to clarify questions. In fact, if I bring over an example that I have here, this is a Q&A Maker that I have in a demo one, but you'll see here one of the questions is what's the password policy? And if I go in to test this, because you can test these in Q&A Maker itself, I could say something like, how do I get a new password? I should get the response here where it's going to ask me, okay, that depends. Which type of password do you need to create? That's coming from this answer right here. Do I want a user password or a system password? So Q&A Maker calls this a follow-up prompt or multi-turn, and it's really powerful because you can actually have different questions that are tied in automatically. So this is more of a come on a pre-written script, which is pretty common, internally. So I'll say I want a user password, and this brings me specifically to, if I close this, this is the user password answer, and you'll see it says context only. This answer will only ever come up if I click this user password button because I asked this question first. So this kind of information can be really, really powerful. You can write little scripts for how people generally go through the, let's say, IT ticketing process. And if you already have a ticketing service, maybe you have Zendesk or ServiceNow, or even if you use Dynamics or some other CRM for that kind of tool, you already have the metrics. So you use them to your benefit, and that's kind of where one of those, a lot of places like to say they're using business intelligence smartly. Like, this is a really smart way to use business intelligence. So this is a nice way to get Q&A Maker working in there. And then in conjunction with that, if I bring up and show you how Lewis works, this is where the natural language processing is happening. This is the actual Lewis app for that demo. So you'll see I have a bunch of different ways to say the same thing. I need some time off. I want to take a vacation. I want to take personal leave. I want a few days off. I'm going on vacation from Monday to Friday, things like that. And anything that you see in blue is actually a little variable. They call them entities in Lewis. And the nice thing about this is you can identify different ways to say the same word. So if I want to take vacation time, or if I want to say sick time, vacation time could be personal time, PTO, vacation, vacay. Sick time can be sick time, I'm calling in sick, my child is ill, I have an illness. All those things are specific to that one term. So I know that if I get basically a rating of 1 for vacation, I'm going through the vacation request process, not through the sick time request process. And you can also see that the time off here, it comes in as actually a pre-built term within Lewis, which is date time. So you have a lot of opportunity here, and it will automatically pull. Like if I say I'm taking sick time from tomorrow until next Tuesday, although generally we don't, schedule our sick time, you actually will get back, okay, well, tomorrow is what, the 11th, and next Tuesday is the 17th, something like that, 18th. It will know that date, it will pass it along, and you'll have it automatically. When it comes to the workflow in the background, that was all done using Power Automate through AtBot, but that's something you would just write yourself in C# or Node if you don't want to use a no-code tool, and that's perfectly fine, which is why I don't really get into the workflow aspect, because you're just coding. At that point, it's not anything different than if you're writing a regular app that you would put like on a website, that kind of thing. It's really the natural language processing of Lewis and the Q&A Maker aspect and the knowledge tool that comes through that really is sort of the new paradigm aspect of these types of tools. All right.
Okay.
Do you have any questions, Peter?
There was something actually, something which perked my interest there. Like, I haven't got an Alexa, and that's partly because to me the technology is about 5 years away. Okay, because to me where Alexa gets very powerful would be, say, book a flight from New York to London, and Alexa says, "Oh, do you want to go on the same airline as you did before?" And he goes, "Yeah." "Do you want a hotel?" "Yes, I do." "Do you want the same hotel?" "Yes, I do." So it's picking up on my previous behavior. Mm-hmm. But I think what you're saying, what you told me, is that Alexa is just the endpoint interface and out interface, and you need to have some machine. You need to have the AI Azure bots behind the whole thing.
That's accurate. Yep. So with Alexa coming back and saying, you stayed in a Marriott last time, do you want to stay in a Marriott again? What's your Marriott number? That kind of stuff would be coming from whatever tool you're using in the background. So in this case, I'm talking about Azure and Microsoft cloud services. It could be very well be built in, on Alexa, on their developer platform if you wanted to do that. I actually really dislike the example of booking travel. I realize as business people that work in business, it's not as big of a deal for us to pull the trigger on purchasing a flight. But man, I would hate to do that via voice. I guess even I would probably even be personally not thrilled with working with a travel agency, even back before the Google Flights was a thing. Just because I like to be able to see my options, which I realize at that point you wouldn't have access to all the information, which would be harder. But they always actually Microsoft loves to use that as an example for their natural language entities, because you can say I want to book a flight from San Francisco to Seattle sometime tomorrow and use the credit card on file, and here's my TSA number and here's my frequent flyer number, and they always use that because you have a number of different things.
Yeah. But
more real world is like I want to book a meeting with my boss tomorrow, sometime that I'm free and he's free, in the main conference room to talk about the budget next year. Like that's something more people realize and can relate to, because that's not 5 years from now. That's yesterday. That's the kind of thing where Siri's been doing that for a while. And yes, Siri and Google Assistant and all those things aren't perfect. It's because they have to cater to literally billions of people out there using the products, versus this is a homegrown app that you can build internally and make it exactly how you want it. So if you have some sort of phrasing or something that's very specific to your organization, or a process that's very specific, you can build on that sort of foundational experience that people have with Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, and make it the way that you want to, which I think actually is a really good thing moving forward. Because like I said, that making an appointment thing, yes, you can use Find Time, you can use Cortana, but it's not going to be amazing. And because it's again catering to so many people, it has to be the lowest common denominator. Whereas if there's a way that you do it internally, you can make it do it exactly the way you want to.
Yes, I agree. I think the healthcare option you said, like, what is this patient's blood pressure yesterday, and then it immediately comes back to you, and instead of you having to go to a device with a keyboard and then look it up. That's where you don't need the options.
Yeah.
You just need the result.
Yeah. Or not even reporting back what was there, but saying it's always risky just to use the key phrases to turn on these tools, but like, okay, Google, patient's blood pressure is 125/90, and you didn't have to do anything other than say that, right? So that information's out there. And the thing can at least listen. And that could be where it doesn't have to be an Alexa, that could be an Apple Watch, so you're not yelling it and people can't hear it, because at that point you're dealing with HIPAA and who heard you say what, and at that point it gets to be a security issue to some extent. So it could be you speak quietly to your Apple Watch, or to your I don't know if Google has it, or any of the Android watches, and you tell it through that, because you're going to be right close to your watch anyway. And then the patient actually hears the information. So if, for once a doctor tells me something,
Right. No, I agree. Okay, we're coming up to the hour. As ever,
sure.
Matt, it was a pleasure and very educational.
Yeah.
We got your slides, and we'll be pushing those across social media.
Yes. There's a bunch more slides, there's a couple more demos, and probably most importantly to people, they really want to generally see the resources. This is always the slide whenever I present where people take pictures. This is in the slides, they will be sent to you afterwards. And sort of a big picture one, I only barely scratched the surface of what Azure Cognitive Services have. We talked about language, we talked about knowledge. There are vision, there are speech, there are translation, there are a number of other different text analytics to figure out if somebody's angry or happy, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of really cool tools. This is sort of a sister project to my periodic table of Office 365. This is for AI. So you can definitely run with this. And I know after this, you guys will be sending out a confirmation email with the link. And also feedback is much appreciated. I definitely appreciate it for getting quality improvement over the time of doing these things.
Okay, appreciate that, Matt. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
And thank you for all the attendees for spending your lunch hour with us. So now get back to work.
That's right.
Thank you.
Take care, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.